everyone! Welcome to Immediate Immersion Live. Today I'm excited to talk to you about that first day of school, which for me is coming up in just a couple of weeks. I go back to school this week on Wednesday, and kids come back next week Thursday is when they come back. Yeah, next week Thursday. So I've only got a little more than a week before kids come in, and so let's talk about that first day. Hopefully, most of you don't have to go back until later in August or maybe even early September, but that's not my truth. So let's go ahead and talk about our first day today. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the comments. And if you're watching this on the replay, welcome. And you can also put them down in the comments as well. And I check back frequently to answer any questions. For those who don't know, my name is Scott Benedict, and you are watching Immediate Immersion Live, where we're all about comprehension-based instruction in the modern language classroom. And we'll be right back. And welcome back to that first day of school. I know it's kind of a dual-edged sword. You're kind of excited to meet new students and get started on a new year, but you're also sad that the summer is ending. I know that's how I feel. I don't even know where my summer went. It seemed to go so quick. Every year it seems to go quicker and quicker and quicker. It seems like just last week I was wishing my 8th graders on to high school, and now we are back to school. So let's go ahead and start with setting the tone. It's really important to set the tone from the beginning of the school year, right from day one. I know the old adage is don't smile until December, if at all. And I don't ever condone that. You got to get to know your students, be a little bit friendly, build their trust so that they will work for you. But you want to set the right tone. And what I like to do is set my expectations right from the beginning. That doesn't mean I'm going over my rules and expectations on that first day. I don't, because I don't want to use English, number one, and I don't want to bore kids. That's what every other teacher is doing. So I find other ways to set the tone. One of the things that I do is I play music in the background as kids are entering the classroom. Now, you think because I'm a Spanish teacher, I would be playing Hispanic music, but I do not. I play music that I listen to on my own time, and I don't listen to Hispanic music normally. So I want kids to kind of get a little insight into who I am, and they can do that through the music I listen to. So that's playing in the background. When kids are coming into the classroom, remember, I don't know who these kids are. Most of them are new to me. I might have a few kids who I had last year who are now coming back to me, but the majority of my kids are brand new to me. So I'm welcoming them into the classroom. I am outside that classroom. I am smiling with them, and I'm welcoming them open-armed into my classroom. And then I want to set the tone that Spanish, or whatever your target language is the language of communication, because I'm not going to speak any English on that first day. Yes, that's even for level 1 kids. This year, I've got a heck of a schedule with 2 brand new teachers who are new to CI that I'm going to have to work with all year long. Plus, I'm teaching level 1, level 1B, level 2, and level 3. So I've got 4 different preps, and I teach 6 out of 7 classes. So even in my level 1s, I'm not speaking any English whatsoever. I'm setting the tone so they know this is what to expect. On my board, I will have a task for them to do. Now, that will obviously be in English. My English is only ever going to be on that board. I am not going to speak any English because I don't want to break the illusion of the immersion. But the instructions are up there, and they're getting to work when they walk in. Which then brings us to the icebreakers. Now, I am not big on what most people think are typical icebreakers. I can get to the right screen. There we go. Because I am an introvert. I am an extreme introvert, and I can't stand being put into that icebreaker situation. My principal says he's an introvert, but he makes us do these icebreakers every year. I hear the word icebreaker, and the hair on the back of my neck goes up, and I start to get a little panic. I don't like them. It puts me in a very uncomfortable position. And I think many of my students are the same way. So I look for other ways to do icebreakers than the typical icebreaker. So one of the ways that I do that is we go outside. I live in California, so our classrooms are indoor, but our doors don't open up into a hallway. They open up to the outside. So I have a quad right outside my room. Now, I know not everybody has this, but you can adapt to what you have or go to a space where you could do this. Even if it's outside, even if you're in one of the winter states, you can go outside in the fall. It's still warm enough, and you can do this kind of activity. I have a beach ball, and we play what I call word volleyball. Now, my level ones don't know anything in Spanish yet, because my requirement is before you can hit the ball, and you can only hit it underhand. You can't spike the ball or kick it or do any of those types of things. You have to say a Spanish word. And so usually I have themes. Like for my Spanish 2s, I have them count that first day. And we see how high our number can get before it hits the floor, before it hits the ground. I might, with my level 3s, give an option like, I want you to say an animal in Spanish or words that start with B. It just doesn't matter. It's just something to get them to think about it and to have some fun at the same time. It's not typical volleyball where you're playing with a net and you have two teams on either side. We play a circle, and the goal is just to keep that ball going and not let it touch the ground or stop. The moment someone hits the ball without saying a Spanish word or it hits the ground, then the play stops and we start over. For my level ones, because they don't have anything, I say you just have to say any word that you know in Spanish. That could be hola, that could be taco, that could be Paco, whatever you know. Just say a word in Spanish and then hit the ball. And so that's one way that we can get together. We're teamwork. We're working together as a team. And it's not putting kids one-on-one, which makes me very nervous for myself because I don't like that situation. So I don't put my students in that particular situation. So that's one type of icebreaker that I do. Another one is I will have students draw pictures off of a certain topic. So for level 1, I usually have them draw me a picture of what they like to do, like a hobby or an activity or a sport. For my level 2s, something that they're afraid of. And for my level 3s, something they did over the summer. And then we'll use those pictures as conversation starters, again, with a whole group. And that gets us talking in Spanish. Even in my level 1s, we can do that in the target language. And it starts to setting that tone. We're getting to know each other. So there's an icebreaker type element in there. And we're using the target language, which is what we're going to talk about next. So the target language is important. If you start your school year in English, then kids are going to have the expectation, whether consciously or unconsciously, that this is an English class where Spanish is sometimes spoken. I want it the other way around. I wanted a Spanish class or a French or German or Mandarin or Russian or whatever you teach class that sometimes speaks in English. That's what I want. So in order for that to happen, I have to use the target language as much as possible on that first date. And so I work really, really hard not to say anything in English once I set in the room. Now, when I'm greeting kids outside the door, especially my level 1s, they don't know any Spanish, so I might say a couple of words in English, but once I get in that room, it is all Spanish. Any English that I need, I will put on the board. And this gives that illusion of being in an immersive language environment because they're only hearing the target language. They're not hearing any English from me whatsoever. So, for my level ones, I am writing all of the words I use on the board. So I usually use a Google Doc. I make a 2-column table. On the left side will be the target language in one color. So I set that whole column to be one color. And then on the other side is the English column. And I have it set to a different color so they know where to look. I use a Google Doc for 2 reasons. One, I don't have a lot of board space and my handwriting gets sloppier as I go. And 2, I can preserve this and give it for absent kids, or kids can refer to it later. I can share it with them. Even though I tell them this is not a vocabulary list, I do not expect you to memorize these words at all. But for level 1, they know nothing. So everything I say has to be written down. Every form of the, every form of the verb. As I use them, I write them up there with the translation. If I refer to that word again and it's already on the board, I go and point at it and I pause so the kids know exactly what I'm talking about. And this way I can stay in the target language, but my kids can still 100% understand what I'm saying. As the year progresses, I don't have to translate as much in my level 1. And at the beginning of the year, my level 2s and level 3s, I don't have to translate a heck of a lot either. Each year, I'm translating less and less because they know more and more. But by my staying in the target language this way, and then giving them access to what the words mean, because when I know they don't know the word, I'm going to write it in English. And then kids also have the option to raise their hand and ask a question if they don't understand a word, and I'll write that word down if it's not already there. This way I can stay in the target language and kids can still 100% understand. Now, I know people say, you got to stay in bounds when you are using the target language. Well, that's easy when you're in level 3 and maybe even for level 2. But in level 1, on day 1, in bounds probably means hola and taco, and everything else is out of bounds, if they even know that much. So this is how I combat that. I'm still making sure that I'm 100% comprehensible because the kids can see what I'm saying on the board. I'm not subtitling myself. I am not saying, hola clase, buenos dias, hello class, good day, in English. I'm not doing that because then kids tune out the language and just wait for the translation. I am translating word for word, so they still have to make sense of the sentence. Now, I might put an expression if they go together like buenos dias. I'll put that as an expression on there. But normally it's going to be word for word. I'm not writing a whole sentence down there because I want them to still make meaning, use their brains to make meaning and put the words together to make a meaningful sentence out of it. But this way I can stay in the target language and kids can understand what I'm going through, and we can have class in the target language on that first day, and it sets that tone. And then the activities that I'm doing are usually talking about those pictures. So that extends that icebreaker. It's building student relationships as I'm getting to know my students, and we're doing it all through the target language. I don't have a goal to teach anything specific in the target language. My only goal these first few weeks is to get to know my students through the target language. And this is how I do it. And as I said, in level 1, it's every single word. I have pages and pages of these Google Docs, and I keep one Google Doc per class period. So period 1 has their doc, period 2 has their doc, period 3 has their doc. And I keep the same doc all year long. So I don't have to share one file one time on our learning management system. And I'll just put a page break in there, put a date in there. But again, kids never have to refer to it because it is not a vocabulary list. But for those kids who feel they need to have a vocabulary list, it's there if they want it. But I never assess them on that. And a lot of that vocabulary is what I call throwaway vocabulary. We need it today, but in the long run, it's just not, they don't need it. So let's go ahead and move on to rules and expectations. Notice on that first day, I haven't mentioned it at all. And I'm probably not going to mention it probably the first week unless something specific comes up. If a kid violates one of the rules that I have in that first week, which is usually rare, I will point it out and I will discuss it at that time as it comes up in context. But once I'm through that first week and I've set this tone, we started to get to know each other through the target language, and we're building that trust and like with each other, I'm going to slowly start talking about my rules and my expectations. Now, I'm not doing them all in one day. I'm spreading them out over a period of weeks, and I'm only teaching what's applicable. If we're not going to do something, let's say novel reading. I have rules and expectations that go when we read a novel. But we don't read a novel until second trimester in my school. So that's about November, the beginning of November, right after Halloween. So I'm not going to start talking about that in August when we're going back. The kids aren't going to remember. So I'm only talking about the rules and expectations that apply in the context that we're doing. So as we do them, I will explain them. Now, a lot of teachers will have kids come up with their own rules for the classroom. If that works for you, awesome. It gives kids some autonomy in the class and feel like they have some control. And to be honest, kids usually come up with more strict rules than you probably would, and are usually a little meaner in the consequences than you would probably be as well. But you get buy-in from them. And to be honest, they already know what's expected. You know, they may not show it to you, but they know it. And so usually when they're coming up with the rules, they fall in line with the rules you already had in your head anyway. But this gives them some control, which then builds some trust in you and your classroom, which this trust and relationships goes really, really a far way in classroom management. When you have a totalitarian type attitude, a dictatorship type attitude in your classroom, then you're going to constantly butt heads with students, and they're not going to behave for you. They're going to cause problems with you on a regular basis, and it's just going to get worse as the year goes along, and everybody's going to be miserable. So that's not anything that we really want to do. But slowly, not on that first day, not on that second day, if you have to on that third day, but I like to go at least the first full week without explaining any rules or expectations unless they come up naturally in the class. That's the only time. And then I will address my rules and expectations as we go, starting in week 2. But I'm not going to spend a long time on it at all. We're just going to do what we need to do, get the rules and expectations out so my kids know what to expect, and then we're going to move on. But if you do this slowly, over a period of time, and specifically in context to what they're doing in class, they tend to work a little bit better. They stay in the kids' brains a little bit better, and you get better overall compliance with them. And remember to think about inviting your students to help you come up with these rules and expectations so that they get some buy-in into the classroom. The last thing that I would like to talk about today would be academics and fun. You can't always just have academics and no fun. It never works out. Kids get bored. They get frustrated. They need to have some kind of fun to get them energized about the topic that you're teaching. And so there are lots of things that you can do to get that done. A lot of things you can do is add in a lot of those online games they now have that aren't specifically for languages but can be very well adapted. Things like Kahoot, things like Blooket, things like Gimkit. My kids' favorite is Gimkit. They really do like that one. It used to be Kahoot, but now Gimkit, because there's a variety of games, they get more excited about that one than the others. But find what works for your classroom and do that. Other things, brain breaks. When we are constantly talking in the target language and kids have got all this stuff going on in their lives, they coming from math class, they got a test in English class, all this stuff is going on. They're in cognitive overload. And so giving them a brain break, a 2 to 5 minute max little break in the middle of your instruction can go a long way, especially if you see the energy is dying down and the attention span is dying down. So you do these, what we call brain breaks. These usually are action-packed. You want to get kids out of their seats and get them energized a little bit. They don't necessarily have to work with the target language, but they can. But it's a change of pace, so it gives their brain needed break for a few moments before we get back into the lesson, and it reinvigorates everything that goes on. Our expert on brain breaks is La Maestra Loca. Let me put it in the chat here. LaMaestraLoca.com is her website. That's Annabelle Williamson. If you go to her website, she's got tons and tons and tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of brain breaks that you can implement in your classroom, and they are awesome. Some of my favorites, not all of them have come from her, but some of my favorites are the rock, paper, scissors. Those are usually I got from her. She's got different variations of rock, paper, scissor activities. She's also given me the ideas of using the Wii Sports obstacle courses. So you show the video from YouTube, and then the little dude that is in the obstacle course, the kids have to do all the things that he does. So when he runs, you run. When he jumps, you jump. When he sways, you sway. So that's when it gets them up and moving. I like to do hot potato, musical chairs, duck, duck, goose. These are just really, really quick little brain breaks to get kids up and moving before they are completely died down within their brain power. So those are some things you can do. You can also incorporate other games and activities in your classroom. So you can play like the pencil game. I love this one as a review game. So after we do something, I now want to review it, whether it be a novel chapter, a reading we did, a story we did. I can ask true and false questions. And then students in pairs will have an object, usually a pencil. And if the answer is false, they are to grab the pencil. If they have the pencil, when I say it's false, they get a point. If they grab the pencil when it's true, they lose a point. If nobody grabs the pencil, no points are gained or lost. And this is a fun game because it really gets kids to think, because they want to logically pull the pencil up when it's true. And sometimes kids can win with negative points because they have less negative points than their partner. And it's a fun little review game. There are Jeopardy games you can play. Pictionary. That's another one I like to play, where I put my chairs in rows in front of the whiteboard. Everybody's facing forward except for the back row, which is the last person is facing the opposite direction. I give them each a word. They can only draw the word on a piece of paper. It must pass up the row to every student. And then the front row student has to draw that picture on the board, trying to get their teammates to guess what the word is. So that's a fun little activity that kids like. Running dictation, which I got from Jason Fritz, where you put a sentence or two outside the classroom, and then kids take turns in a relay with their team to go out and try to get as much of the sentence and give it back to the scribe as possible for them to copy it down. in the most accurate way, including spelling, accent marks, punctuation marks, all those different things, and get as right as possible. And the first team who gets that done wins the game. So there's lots of different ways that you can mix academics and fun, especially in the beginning when kids are trying to get back into the swing of things, of going to school after being all on their own for the summertime and being able to pretty much choose what they were going to do on their own and not being dictated by the school day. So find ways to incorporate fun activities, especially in the beginning of the school year, but also throughout the year to keep the momentum going. Now, if you have any other ideas on having a successful back to school day, the back to school first day, please put them in the comments below and share. I'd love to hear what you have to say. If you found this helpful, please like and subscribe to our channel. It really does help. And share it with your teacher friends to give them some tips as well. And if you want to learn more, right now we are starting our back to school boot camp. And this is giving you all of the different ways to get ready and reduce the teacher anxiety for getting ready for everything back to school, from that first day, that first week, that first month, setting up your rules, your expectations, your procedures, your back to school night, communicating with parents, all of that stuff we're talking about in this 10-part webinar series. If that's something that you want to learn more and go into more depth, like this first day, we go into much more depth on that, you can go to mm.us/bootcamp. You can read more about it and register. We have had the first 3 classes already, but they're recorded, so you can watch them at your leisure. And you'll have access to all of the classes until next September 30th. So September 30th of 2024. We meet on Saturdays. So if you can't participate live, as I said, the classes get recorded so you could watch them afterwards. But it'll get you ready for not only this year, but also next year, because you can rewatch all of the information and start for next year as well. So if that's something you're interested in, please go to mm.us/bootcamp and register. We'll be glad to have you. Again, if you have any questions, please let me know. And otherwise, everybody, have a great day, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.